Wolverine can definitely take whatever the world throws at him. He survived some insane events, and this video is all about those he's walked away from in one piece. Let's get into it. Sure, you could probably make the case that Sabretooth is Wolverine's greatest enemy, thanks to their past and personal connection, but personally, I think Magneto is Logan's biggest foil. And it comes down to the simple fact that Magneto's power level and skill set seems custom designed to halt Wolverine in his tracks. It's kinda hard to beat the master manipulator of metal when your bones are covered in adamantium. And there's one comic book moment that shows just how ineffective Wolverine can be against Magneto. In the comic story Fatal Attractions, the X-Men are doing their normal weekend activity of trying to stop Magneto from causing destruction when suddenly the crazy dial gets cranked up to 11. After Wolverine brutally attacks Magneto, the villain responds by going the extra mile. Using his powers, he rips the adamantium out of Wolverine's skeleton. Can you imagine having your bones suddenly sucked out of your body? Yeah. Thanks to his natural healing factor, Wolverine did survive this, but it must have been one of his most unpleasant experiences of all time. Maybe this should act as a wake-up call to you, Wolverine, about fighting a guy who can turn you into a puppet. X-Men: The Last Stand may have not been the Dark Phoenix adaptation that we wanted. You guys remember how badly they treated poor Cyclops? But to its credit, it did have some solid special effects and some tense fight scenes. Although this version of Jean Grey's Dark Phoenix basically just kinda stood around and looked mad for the whole movie, she did have one major scene of destruction and devastation. At the end of the film, after the climactic mutant battle on Alcatraz, the Phoenix is officially released, completely disintegrating everything in sight. If only there was a mutant who could withstand the force of such an attack. Oh, wait, yeah, there is. Wolverine is the only one that can get close to Jean during this rampage, and it looks brutally painful. The Phoenix's intense attack keeps destroying parts of Wolverine, but his healing factor works fast, repairing his body just as it gets destroyed. It's a brutal back and forth that ends with Wolverine having to do the hardest thing he's ever had to do before, ending the life of the woman he loves most. So on top of extreme physical damage, he also suffers a huge blow emotionally. Talk about a rough day. If there's one fact that gets hammered home again and again across both the comics and the films, it's that Wolverine is darn near indestructible. A lot of things that would normally destroy us, mere mortals, barely gives Wolverine a tickle. Case in point, we've seen Wolverine survive nuclear bombs, both in the comics and on film. The movie moment comes from The Wolverine, where our heroic Wolvie saves an officer in Nagasaki after the atomic bomb is dropped. It's an amazing scene as we see the flames engulf Wolverine, but the mutant keeps fighting to save this guy's life. A decision he would probably regret a few years later, but still. The end result is Wolverine looking like a burnt piece of pizza you left in the oven too long. But of course he gets better. What's so cool about this is not only did Wolverine survive it, but he never stopped trying to save lives during the brutal bombing. And in the comics, the character is also immune to nuclear blasts. In Venom number 9, Wolverine gets caught up in a nuclear explosion. When two cybernetically enhanced women try to nuke the Venom symbiote out of existence, Logan is caught in the crossfire. But don't worry, he got better. The acclaimed comic series Civil War is famous for a lot of things, but for all the epicness that's packed into that story, don't forget about the time Wolverine was melted down to nothing but his adamantium skeleton, only to regrow all of his organic material in a matter of minutes. The blast came from the fiery villain Nitro, who was powerful enough to completely destroy every part of Wolverine except for his metal skeleton. How hot is that exactly? Well, think about when you bite into a pizza roll just after it came out of the microwave. Yeah, it was hotter than that. Now, this has proved to be one of the most controversial events Wolverine has ever walked away from. His healing factor's always been a little vague or ill-defined based on whoever's writing the comic, but this moment definitely raised a few eyebrows. Not only is it questionable that Wolverine was able to regenerate his entire body from seemingly nothing, but it also was the fact that the mutant healed almost instantly. Like if there was any doubt that Wolverine's healing factor was one of the most powerful in all of Marvel Comics, then this moment proved just how powerful it could be. Although he doesn't have any superpowers, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, is probably the scariest anti-hero in the entire Marvel Universe. Even if you're the strongest hero in the world, you should feel a slight twinge of panic if you know the Punisher has you in his crosshairs. You'd think Wolverine's got nothing to fear from the Punisher. After all, Wolverine is an almost ageless, immortal, incredibly powerful superhero who sometimes looks like Hugh Jackman. Like, why should he be afraid of some guy in a skull shirt? But never underestimate what the Punisher is capable of. After dealing some pretty graphic and not safe for work damage to Wolverine's face with a shotgun, the Punisher decided to pull something right out of a Tom and Jerry cartoon by flattening Wolverine with a steamroller. I can't really imagine a worse way to go out than a steamroller starting at your feet and working its way up to your head. Talk about brutal. Do not mess with Frank Castle, okay? Of course, Wolverine survived, but we just got to assume that it was one of the most painful attacks he's ever endured. And we wouldn't be surprised if he walked kinda funny for a little bit afterwards. This one starts off relatively harmless. Wolverine's doing the stupid thing of charging Magneto, but luckily, this is when he doesn't have his adamantium skeleton yet. So old Magneto can't just control the guy. He starts by throwing a bunch of small objects at Wolverine, which our hero easily dodges or slices with bone claws. But then the situation turns into the world's worst amusement park roller coaster. Using a concrete slab with a lot of metal piping in it, Magneto impales Wolverine, and we see the piping dig into and around his body, acting like a demon version of seatbelts, strapping him in for what's sure to be the ride of his life. If this wasn't bad enough, Magneto then sends Wolverine sailing into a nearby river. So yeah, Wolverine survives, but it must have been excruciating, because he's sitting at the bottom of that river for quite a long period of time before Mystique fishes him out. Can you imagine the agony of drowning over and over and over again without being able to move as sharp pipes stab you all over? This is one of those times it seems like an extreme healing factor might be more of a curse than a blessing. Wolverine not only has survived countless physical attacks, but also a whole bevy of internal ones as well. One of the most memorable and probably grossest things he's ever endured is when the X-Men were fighting the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. In a terrible luck of the draw, Wolverine ends up facing the Horsemen of Death. And that's really one enemy you don't want to face, unless you have an extreme healing factor. When the two faced off, Wolverine attempted his normal slashing technique that's gotten him out of multiple jams in the past, but it doesn't exactly go very well. The Horseman of Death responds by infecting Wolverine with every disease known to man all at once. You'd honestly think that's more Pestilence's thing, but I guess they share. It's a brutal image to see all the cancerous boils and other gag-inducing effects suddenly ravage Wolverine's body. But Wolverine ends up surviving this because his healing factor is working overtime. Like, it's not only major diseases either. You see that on top of seizures and strokes, Wolverine has to endure cataracts and even lupus, all mixed up in his body like some sort of gross blender concoction. I think Wolverine definitely deserved a sick day after that ordeal. Good thing his body's basically vitamin C in mutant form. Watching Wolverine fight the Hulk is probably one of the most visually satisfying things in the Marvel Universe. It just feels so right having these two raging superheroes go toe-to-toe with each other. It's usually an epic slugfest, with Wolverine being the faster fighter, but the Hulk delivering devastating blow after devastating blow. These two go together like peanut butter and jelly. Well, that is if peanut butter wanted to smash jelly and make it jam. Yeah. We haven't gotten to see these two Marvel heroes duke it out on the big screen just yet, though that might change in the future. We have seen it a lot in the comics though, and especially the animated movies. In Hulk vs. Wolverine, it's exactly what the title suggests, and we're lucky enough to get to see an epic brawl. But any encounter you have with the Incredible Hulk is automatically a dangerous one, and I can't believe Wolverine survived. Just look at the way Hulk smashes Wolverine with a huge rock. For anybody else, this smashing would have turned them into a gross red liquid, but thanks to the mutant's strength and endurance, Wolverine lives to fight another day. Maybe next time, try dodging a little quicker. The big question regarding anyone with a massive healing power is just what exactly they can heal from. This is especially true for Wolverine, as his healing powers have definitely been in flux over the years. One of the biggest things he ever healed from came from 1987's Uncanny X-Men Annual number 11, which saw the X-Men battle the alien mutant Horde. This guy was one seriously bad dude who wanted to dominate the entire universe and force the X-Men to travel to another world to steal a powerful item called the Crystal of Ultimate Vision. Talk about crazy. During the final fight with Horde near the crystal, Horde ended up impaling Wolverine with a javelin and ripping out the guy's heart, ending his life in an instant. Shocking, right? But then a single drop of Wolverine's blood happened to land on the crystal, which caused his whole body to regenerate from that single drop. And as a bonus perk, he came back briefly with the powers of a god. And sure, Wolverine had a little bit of help because it was the crystal that allowed him to regenerate from such a little drop of blood, but still pretty impressive. Think of the worst thing you've ever eaten, and I guarantee you, Wolverine's eaten worse. Because no matter how gross something is, I cannot imagine anything worse than a tiny bomb that completely destroys you from the inside. So be careful what you ingest, kids. Don't go around swallowing strange objects. The situation was this. Wolverine was going toe-to-toe with a soldier who was completely decked out in adamantium armor. You see, that's a little more advantageous than what Wolverine's working with because all of his adamantium is in his bones. He's still got that relatively soft, squishy, and tactilely sensitive exterior. During the fight, the soldier forced Wolverine to swallow a small bomb, and once Wolverine swallowed it, the soldier detonated it. Cue the shower of Wolverine intestines. But this bomb was interesting in that it not only destroyed Wolverine's body, but also his soul. Like, even though his body regenerated in a way that we all knew it would, what came back was just a lifeless husk stuck in a weird vegetative state. Eventually, of course, he was brought back to his normal cigar-chomping self due to some weird comic magic, but the whole ordeal really highlighted some major flaws in Wolverine's defenses. I still can't believe Wolverine survived being melted down to nothing but his adamantium skeleton. That's nuts. What do you think? What's the most insane thing Wolverine has survived? Let us know in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button for more awesome comic book content. Thanks for watching CBR.